Okay, welcome to another episode of Fun with Maps. I'm your host, Dan Hanson, and don't let me confuse you. Yeah, this is a shirt from some of my friends from Lithuania, but today's topic is, well, it's a city, an amazing city, actually a tale of two cities, split by a river. We're going to look at Budapest, Hungary. Budapest is the largest city and capital of Hungary. It's the 9th largest city in the European Union. It's got about 1.7 million people, which makes it just a little bigger than Phoenix, Arizona. It's an international tourist destination. They're in the top 25 in the world. They get about 4.5 million international visitors every year because it's just an amazing city. Let's zoom in a little here. I'll show you the map and we'll take a look at the map of Budapest, Hungary. Okay, so here's Hungary, Central Europe. Budapest, kind of in the north, central. Budapest, about a third of the Hungarians live in Budapest. And you can see it's surrounded by, here's Austria, Slovakia, Ukraine, Romania, Serbia, little Croatia, and a little less Slovenia. So that's the modern borders of Hungary. Of course, not too long ago, this would have been Czechoslovakia, this would have been Yugoslavia, and this would have been the USSR. So you can see how the maps change. But Budapest is here in Hungary. Actually, this would have been Austria-Hungary not too long ago. But Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, USSR, they're not there anymore. We've got Slovakia, Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, and Ukraine. So that's what's bordering. Now when we look at Budapest, the map really tells us something because of this river going through it. That's the Danube River. It goes right down the middle. It gives a northwest border of Hungary with Slovakia, and it basically splits the country of Hungary east and west. So, and of course it splits Budapest into east and west. The Danube is the second longest river in Europe. The Volga is the longest, but that's primarily in Russia. It's way over here to the east, and it empties out into the, it's a national river of Russia. It enters into the Caspian Sea. But for main Europe, the Danube, they say it's the second, but to me, the Volga seems kind of like it's in Asia. So, but the Danube is the second. So the Danube begins here in Germany, a little above Switzerland. You see it traveling here basically eastward, comes through here, through Austria, the border of Slovakia and Hungary, bisects Hungary basically, comes down here, gives a border for Croatia and Serbia, comes through Serbia, here's Romania, Bulgaria, and up here, and it goes into the Black Sea. So, one interesting about the Danube River, it goes through more capital cities than any other river in the world. So here we've got, it starts here, it goes through Vienna, Austria, that's a capital. Then it hits Bratislava, Slovakia, that's a capital. Then of course Budapest, today's topic, Budapest, capital of Hungary, and then it goes through Belgrade, Serbia. So that's 4 capitals that the Danube River goes through. So in this episode of Fun with Maps, we're going to zoom in on Budapest, or you may see that some will call it Budapest, and we'll talk about that. And we'll look at the Danube River too, and how that influences, the map influences the history of Budapest, Hungary, Eastern Europe, and actually the world. So let's have some fun with maps with Budapest. So let's drill down a little into Budapest, and then to consider Budapest you have to look at Hungary. This isn't the history of Hungary, it's not the map of Hungary, both of which are fascinating. It's Fun with Maps Budapest, but we still have to talk about Hungary. And you can see here in the map of Europe where Hungary is. There's kind of Central Eastern Europe, right in the middle of Europe there. You know, when I told you in the Fun with Maps about Finland, when I was a kid I was collected some stamps, and I learned a lot about it. I remember Suomi, Finland, for example. I remember seeing stamps from Hungary that said Magyar Posta, like this one. Magyar stamp from the late second half of the 20th century. So the Magyars were people who originated in the Urals of Western Russia. They migrated westward to settle in what is now Hungary in the 9th century. The Magyar tribes were forced out of their original homeland. It was just north of Bulgaria, and they settled in where Bulgarian settlers had been the towns of Buda and the town of Pest. And a century later, that's where they officially founded the Kingdom of Hungary. So when we look at here's the map. You can see Budapest here. Again, this is one of those CIA public domain maps. They're pretty good. So you had 3 towns there basically. You had Buda, you had Old Buda, which is basically Old Buda, and Pest. And in 1873 they were officially unified. They were given the new name Budapest. Before this they were either sometimes called Pest Buda, sometimes just called Pest. In English we pronounce it as Budapest, Pest, like that. In Hungarian the S is pronounced like SH, so they'll say Budapest. So if you want to impress your Hungarian friends when you're talking about Budapest, you can call it Budapest, refer to that. And here's the coat of arms of Budapest, or Budapest, whatever you want to call it. So the history's fascinating. We can't get into it too much, but basically the Ottomans conquered Buda in the 1500s and occupied it, and the Turkish rule lasted about 150 years. One of the interesting and lasting effects of this Turkish rule was that the Ottoman Turks constructed bathing facilities within the city. So and some of these baths that the Turks erected during their rule are still in use 500 years later. Let's see if we can find one of the baths here. Okay. You know, when the Romans first colonized this area, it's because of the thermal springs. And you can see some of those ruins still there. It's both for bathing and medicinal purpose and fun, still used. Budapest has a reputation as a city of spas. In the 20s, they started capitalizing on this, seeing the economic potential of the thermal waters in drawing in visitors. This is one of the baths, what it looks like. There's some of the big ones are Karali baths. And a lot of these will have Turkish, Ottoman, Muslim architecture. So here's the Karali baths from the outside. Okay. And we've got here's a Rudis bath from the outside. It's at the foot of a hill. Again, you'll see Turkish architecture in some of these. So the baths are a big part of Budapest even to this day. But let's get back to Hungary and Budapest. So getting back to the history, there was a renewed effort to get the Hungarian capital back from the Turks. So in 1686, the Christian forces seized Buda, and in a few years they got all the land back from the Turks. And then in 1718, the entire Kingdom of Hungary was removed from Ottoman rule. Now, Budapest, the history continues, and it is fascinating, and we should look at it sometime in detail. But right now, there's just too much history for this podcast, this episode. But this, in 1848, was the Hungarian Revolution. It was led by this man here in this statue, a man named Lajos Kossuth. Kossuth. It's pronounced Kossuth. He's called the father of Hungarian democracy. And there are 3 statues of Kossuth in the U.S. There's one in New York, there's one in Washington, and there's one here in Cleveland, Ohio. This is a picture of the statue I took of Kossuth in the university section of Cleveland. It's kind of off on its own, but you can find it, and that's Kossuth. In fact, when the president of Hungary, Paul Schmidt, visited Cleveland in 2011, he went to the Kossuth statue and placed a wreath and visited there. Here's a fun with maps fun fact. At one time, not sure if it's still true, but there were more Hungarians living in Cleveland, Ohio than anywhere in the world outside of Budapest. There's still a very large and active community both in the original old neighborhoods and in newer locations. They have a fantastic Hungarian cultural garden, 2 levels. It's 85 years old or so now. It's really still a big, vibrant community here in Cleveland. Okay, there's a lot more fascinating stuff about the history of Hungary we just don't have time for, but we have to mention the bridges. So you have this Danube River there, right? And you've got to get across it somehow. This is what links Buda and Pest. And this is a photo, a fantastic photo of the chain bridge, which it's the first bridge in 1849. This chain bridge linked Buda and Pest, and it was the first permanent bridge of any kind across the Danube. And someone named Wilfredor took this. It was a commons license here by Wilfredor, a great photo of the chain bridge, and you can see the Hungarian Parliament building, and it's just a fantastic photo. So you had to cross the Danube, and Buda and Pest were linked first by this chain bridge, first bridge across the Danube. So then, there was World War I, and Hungary was with Austria then. It was Austria-Hungary, and they lost the war. And after that collapse, Hungary, the Republic of Hungary, declared itself an independent republic. And then there was, of course, World War II, the Battle of Budapest in 1945, and the chain bridge. Let's see. Chain bridge was destroyed here in World War II. Here's a picture of it, a public domain photo. You can see it destroyed there, and the Parliament in the back. That's right after World War II, and the Battle of Budapest. Again, the history of Hungary is so deep that we just can't cover it here. I hate to even not mention the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. It should be the topic of many episodes itself, but in fact, my friend Jim Balog, he was actually wounded. He was shot in 1956 in the Hungarian Revolution in Budapest. He was a 56er. So here in Cleveland, there's also this statue here showing the freedom. It's a tribute to the freedom fighters of Hungary in 1956. And it's fantastic. Here you see the Hungarian flag, the red, white, and green, but the Soviets had a Soviet symbol there in the middle, and the freedom fighters tore that out, and to show, it's just Hungary. They weren't Soviet anymore. So it's a fascinating story. The freedom fighters, the Revolution of '56. We'll cover that someday, but this is we want to stick to the map. So when we look at, let's see. So we look at the map here. What we really see, okay, so we see the Danube here splitting Hungary, splitting Budapest, and here's the Tisza River. So these two rivers, this and here, basically trisect Hungary. They divide into three regions, and you can see it's landlocked. Hungary's landlocked, but with these rivers, they have access, and they're right in the middle of Central Europe. And Budapest being on the Danube like that, that's what made it such a international force and a strategic location. So Budapest, well, here we see the flag of Hungary. Budapest is what's called an alpha global city because of its strength, commerce, finance, media, art, fashion, research, technology, education, entertainment. You know, it checks all the boxes. It's the financial center of Hungary. It's got over 40 colleges and universities located just in Budapest. It's loaded with museums and cultural institutions. It's got something like 223 museums and galleries, like the Museum of Fine Arts, the Hungarian National Museum, the House of Terror, the Franz Liszt Academy of Music, the Hungarian State Opera House, and so on. So, let's see the Parliament building here. This is an outstanding photo taken, I found it on the web, by Epistola 8, E-P-I-S-T-O-L-A 8. And this is probably the most well-known site in Budapest. It's a neo-Gothic building. It's the Parliament. It's the biggest building in Hungary. It's about almost 900 feet in length. That's where they keep the Hungarian crown jewels. They also call it the Parliament of Budapest, and it's obviously a popular tourist destination. It's on Kossuth Square on the Pest side of the city, so it's the eastern bank of the Danube, and like I say, it's the largest building in Hungary. So the central area of the city along the Danube is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's got several notable monuments, including, like we're seeing here, the Hungarian Parliament, Buda Castle, Fisherman's Bastion, Gresham Palace, the Chain Bridge, which we saw, Matthias Church, and the Liberty Statue. This is a picture of the Hungarian State Opera House. This was taken by PDX-DJ at English. Wikipedia, it's a Commons license. Beautiful picture of the Hungarian State Opera House by PDX-DJ. This was built in the time when it was Austria-Hungary. So that's another one of those amazing tourist attractions. Another is St. Stephen's Basilica. Here's the west part of it in Budapest, taken in 2015 by photographer Andrew Shiva, S-H-I-V-A. So thanks, Andrew. This is the most important religious building in the city, St. Stephen's Basilica. They say the holy right hand of Hungary's first king, St. Stephen, is on display there. So, another huge tourist attraction here in Budapest. This, in Pest, this is arguably the most important site in Pest. Let's go out there. First, this is a picture by Civertan, C-I-V-E-R-T-A-N. This is Andrassy Út. And Út, I guess, means avenue or street. So it goes back to 1872. It's 2 miles long, tree-lined street. It goes all the way to Heroes Square. It's another UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here's a fun fact that tells you how, as the times change, the map changes. So this is called Andrassy Út, but it was renamed 3 times in the 1950s. So that shows how the politics change in the period and how that influences the map. So in 1950, they changed the name to Stalin Street during the Soviet occupation. And then during the 1956 uprising, they renamed it to the Avenue of Hungarian Youth. And then the following year, the governing communists changed the name to People's Republic Street. So the original name, the former name of Andrassy Út, was restored in 1990 after the end of the communist era. So that's Andrassy Street, but you can see how the names changed with the map. Okay, can't mention Budapest without mentioning this guy, Franz Liszt. In fact, their airport is the Budapest Franz Liszt International Airport. He was a composer, virtuoso pianist, conductor, music teacher, arranger, organist in the Romantic era. He was probably the first rock star. You may have seen Listomania or heard about that. This guy was wildly popular, fantastic composer, pianist, all of that. But Budapest has a long, broad music history. You know, besides Liszt, there's composers Donahy and Zoltán Kodály, Béla Bartók, of course, the opera composer Franz Erkel, and a lot of other famous people have come from Budapest. Let's look at, and here's their coat of arms again. So, Paul Erdos, who won the Wolf Prize in Mathematics in 1984, was from Budapest. He's, as someone, a mathematician myself, always admired Erdos. Erno Rubik, from the Rubik's Cube fame, he's from Budapest. Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, even though he doesn't really like that nickname, I guess, from Budapest. The Gabor sisters, Jaja, Eva, and Magda, Gabor, all from Budapest. Harry Houdini, the great escape artist magician from Budapest. And maybe the best, foremost mathematician of his time was John von Neumann, who was from Budapest. So that's a pretty impressive group. Here's another fun fact. Elvis Presley was named an honorary citizen of Budapest. So I got to put in a shameless plug here. You know that picture of Franz Liszt? I took that picture in the Hungarian Cultural Garden here in Cleveland, Ohio. There's a lot of great monuments there. And I actually used that picture for the cover of my book, Murder in the Cultural Gardens. This is a whodunit mystery, but it's based in the Cleveland Cultural Gardens, and it goes through all 30 or so different ethnic heritage gardens, including the Hungarian garden, of course. So here you can see Liszt. I put some crime tape across it. You can find it on Amazon, Murder in the Cultural Gardens, or go to the website murderintheculturalgardens.com for more information. So that's my shameless plug. Now, my friend Jenny Brown, you know, I asked some friends about Budapest who'd been there. She's been there many times. Her parents were born there. She says it's just an amazing city to visit, and I'm really jealous because I really want to get there. Here's a couple of things she told me about Budapest to be sure to mention. She said Budapest is the second oldest underground rail system in Europe. London has the oldest. She says it has lovely artwork and is very easy to use. Castle Hill in Buda is a major attraction featuring the Royal Palace, Fisherman's Bastion, and stunning views of the Hungarian Parliament, which was built in 1904, as we saw. It's right on the Danube, and anytime you see a cruise commercial or a cruise brochure or something trying to sell you a cruise, you'll see that in all the marketing materials. She reminds me that besides Franz Liszt and Bela Bartok and all the Hungarian musical leaders, there's a closer connection to home. George Szell, S-Z-E-L-L, was born in Budapest. He was one of the greatest conductors of the 20th century and really made his name as conductor of the Cleveland Orchestra. So another Budapest, Hungary music connection there. So Budapest sounds like a fascinating place to visit. I hope this episode of Fun with Maps whetted your appetite like it did mine to visit there. There's so much more of the history of Hungary that you really should check out. But for now, hope you enjoyed this episode of Fun with Maps. And I'm your host, Dan Hanson, and we'll see you next episode. Thanks.